ASMR Bible series. Just going to pick up where we left off in Matthew chapter 14, starting now. We will get into the notes here at the bottom, like we usually cover here momentarily. But I think we'll go ahead and read chapter 14 first as we get started. Just prior to that, though, I just want to provide a reminder that if you like these videos and you want to see more of them, please do subscribe. It'll let you know every time one of these videos comes out. And please like these videos if you do enjoy them. It helps the algorithm promote them so that more people can see if they enjoy them or not as well. Now, that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get started here in Matthew chapter 14. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard about the fame of Jesus, and he said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist. He has been raised from the dead. That is why these miraculous powers are at work in him." For Herod had seized John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because John had been saying to him, "It is not lawful for you to have her." And though he wanted him to be put to death, he feared the people, because they thought him to be a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before the company and pleased Herod, so that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me the head of John the Baptist here on a platter." And the king was sorry, but because of his oaths and his guest, he commanded it to be given. He sent and had John beheaded in the prison, and his head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought the platter to her mother. And his disciples came and took the body and buried it, and then they went and told Jesus. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew himself from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said, "They need not to go away. You need to give them something to eat." They said to him, "We only have 5 loaves here and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountains by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was long and far away from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the 4th watch of the night he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come out to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand to him and took him by the hand, and saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." And when they had crossed over, they came to the land at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent around to all that region, and brought to him all who were sick, and implored him that they might only touch the fringe of his garment. And as many as touched it were made well. We'll take a break here real quick to read some of the supplemental notes down here. So this says Jesus' family. A plain reading of the gospel teaches that James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas, together with at least 2 girls, were children born of Mary and Joseph sometime after the birth of Jesus. Joseph is called Joses, a short form of the name in Mark 6:3. The names of the boys are likely given in birth order. As was common in texts from the time, the names of the sisters were not provided. Other close relatives, perhaps cousins, are mentioned without name in Luke 2:44. Jesus' family was hesitant about his role as especially about his claims to be the Son of God. Church tradition relates that Jesus' oldest brother, James, was James who became the leader of the church at Jerusalem. If so, he was a stout believer in Jesus. Josephus adds that James was stoned to death by order of the high priest Annas for transgressing Jewish law in AD 62. And then a note here about Machaerus. Herod the Great built several palace fortresses in and around the Judean desert. Their function was primarily to hold the eastern line of his kingdom, which doubled as the Roman Empire's eastern frontier. They provided luxurious getaway spots for himself and his family. At least three, Alexandrium, Hyrcania, and Machaerus, had previously been Hasmonean fortresses. Herod used these three in particular as prisons for enemies of the state. Herod's palace fortresses all shared a similar topography. Each was located on a high hill surrounded by deep valleys, and most received water via a narrow aqueduct connected to higher hills some distance away. Machaerus was Herod's only palace fortress in Transjordan, and it more than the others faced the Nabateans, Rome's wealthy nemesis to the southeast. Machaerus had an unobstructed view of the northern Dead Sea and the Judean wilderness back to the west, lying close enough to the Transjordan highway to control the route to Nabatea, but far enough away to give the fortress a sense of invincibility. Machaerus included defensive towers, lavish living quarters, water installations, peristyle or columned courtyards, reception halls, a triclinium dining hall, baths, and storerooms for supplies and valuables. Some rooms had a second story. Fragments of columns and capitals of both Doric and Ionic style have been excavated, attesting to the grandeur of the place over time. Remains of a Hasmonean period fortress were found beneath the Herodian remains. A later, lower city once stood on the steep northern slopes of the site. Herod Antipas, son of Herod the Great, celebrated his birthday banquet at the Machaerus Palace, and John the Baptist was executed in the prison somewhere on the site. And so here's Machaerus with the Dead Sea in the background, which looks to be largely a flat plain at this point. Let me continue on. Chapter 15, Traditions and Commandments. Then Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem and said, "Why do your disciples break the traditions of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat." He answered them, "Why do you break the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition? For God commanded, 'Honor your father and mother,' and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. But you say, if anyone tells his father or mother, 'What could you have gained from me?' is given to God, he need not his father or mother. So for the sake of your tradition you have made void the word of God, you hypocrites. Well did Isaiah prophesy of you when he said, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men.' And he called the people to him and said to them, 'Hear and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a person.' Then the disciples came to him. 'Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying?' He answered, 'Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone. They are blind guides. If the blind lead the blind, both fall into a pit.' But Peter said to him, 'Explain the parable to us.' And he said, 'Are you still also without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth passes through the stomach and is expelled? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a person.' So they were more concerned with outward appearance than the content of their heart. And Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, 'Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, Send her away, for she is crying out after us. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. And he answered, It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. She said, Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat, and the crumbs fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered her, O woman, great is your faith. Be it done as you desire. And her daughter was healed instantly. Jesus went on from there and walked beside the Sea of Galilee. And he went up to the mountains and sat down there. And great crowds came down to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others. And they put them at his feet, and he healed them, so that the crowd wondered when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, and the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they glorified the God of Israel. Jesus feeds the 4,000. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I am unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. And the disciples said to him, Where are we to get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed so great a crowd? And Jesus said to them, How many loaves do you have? They said, 7, and a few small fish. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they took up 7 baskets full of broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. After sending away the crowds, they got in a boat and went to the region of Magadan. Let's read notes here about Jesus' ministry beyond Israel. So it says, almost all of Jesus' ministry took place within the traditional borders of Israel in areas dominated by Jews. Yet Jesus also traveled to the region of Tyre and Sidon, where he healed a Gentile woman's daughter, and the region of Decapolis, where he healed many people. It was also at the extreme northern border of Israel in Caesarea Philippi that Peter made his confession that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus declared, On this rock I will build my church. So here in the green is the Jewish region. Jesus' travels from Tyre and Sidon, starting from Gennesaret up into Tyre and into Sidon. And then Jesus travels to Caesarea Philippi, and that's from Bethsaida. So some of the biblical cities that you'll hear, and Nazareth was his place of birth. So this is all Jewish territory here. And Jesus is doing a lot of his ministry here around the Sea of Galilee. We'll also read here real quick about Hellenistic culture in Galilee and its neighbors. Cultural contacts between Canaan and the Aegean can be found in the archaeological record as early as the 2nd millennium BC. The Phoenicians, masters of Eastern Mediterranean shipping lanes, played a key role in the processes by which Hellenistic culture and thought penetrated Israel. The conquest of Tyre by Alexander the Great in 332 BC, then of Jerusalem by the Roman general Pompey in 63 BC, gave political sanction to waves of Greco-Roman culture that had been washing ashore for centuries. The cultural takeover was strongest in cities along the coast, such as Tyre and Sidon, as well as in cities located in the larger inland valleys, such as the Jezreel Valley, and in the region of the Decapolis, east and southeast of the Sea of Galilee. People who lived in smaller inland villages, especially in the hills of Galilee and Judea, were less affected by Greco-Roman culture and thought. Still, Hellenism was an active force for the cultural change everywhere in Judea and Galilee by the New Testament period. Archaeological evidence for the presence of the Greco-Roman culture can be found in inscriptions, architecture, and coins. All New Testament era Gentile inscriptions found in Judea and Galilee were written in Greek, the language of civil administration. There is no record of first-century Jews needing translators in discussions with government administrators, indicating that many Jews in Judea and Galilee had become fluent in Greek. Moreover, the architecture of prominent buildings in larger cities, as well as city plan layouts, was decidedly Greco-Roman. Coins, the medium of exchange for virtually all all transactions were minted under Roman authority and bore Roman symbols, busts of Roman officials, and inscriptions in Greek and or Latin. So, a little bit of historical context in a couple different ways here and here. Always trying to provide, a deeper understanding of the narrative as a whole and why some of the things would be important or, groundbreaking that Jesus would be saying to these people groups. I think that this is a good place to stop. Of course, if anybody has any questions about the reading itself, I'm happy to try and answer any questions that anybody may have, or if you have any thoughts, concerns, feel free to leave that in the comments. But as always, I appreciate you all taking the time to watch. Hope you enjoy. Hope you find it relaxing and informational. And just appreciate you being here. So with that, we'll draw this to